Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Okay, so I was asked to talk a little bit about chanting today. I got 4 topics actually that we picked out from my list, and chanting I think is the beginning point. So we'll talk about that today, and then tomorrow we'll do another topic, art of managing, and after that association and cooperation. So I have 4 seminars lined up so far.
Jai.
So of course this is the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada leaving Calcutta and going to the West. A couple of months ago, Yogeshwara Prabhu was with me in Calcutta, and we went to see Vrindavan Chandra Day, and he was recounting his experience, at least briefly anyway, of being with Prabhupada when he left. He's actually the only person left on the planet that I know of that was with Prabhupada when he actually set sail. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute. But if we look at Prabhupada's Jaladuta diary, then we can see there that on 1st of August, Sunday, he says that he set out for Calcutta by train, and then he mentions a couple of other entries. He visited various people. He was staying with one particular gentleman in a dharamshala. And then Friday the 6th morning to start for Mayapur and return back in the evening. So I had understood previously that Prabhupada had gone to Mayapur the day before, and he set sail, and that he had spent the day there. He was at Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's Samadhi, and then after chanting for a while there, Then he went back to Calcutta, and then the next day set sail. Here it says that he was planning to go on Friday the 6th, whereas he left on the course Friday the 13th. So I'm not completely sure about the timings that I had there, but at any rate we know that on the 12th of August, Prabhupada went around, or he had posted some, like a news clip, a news item to be carried by the regular papers in Calcutta about his, coming voyage. And there's a let me just get this up. There's a quote there from one particular newspaper. There we go. This was on August the 12th, 1965. So one day prior to Prabhupada's leaving, although he put this news item out in, I think, a number of papers, it seems, at least from what we can understand, only one of them printed anything. That was called the Dainik Basmati, which was a Bengali language newspaper. And it's a short clip, but it's very clearly written by Prabhupada. And in it says, the Lord's message goes to America. And then it says, Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Pratibhache Chajita Nagaradi Gram Savatra Prachar Hoi Bay Moranam. That prophecy is going to be fulfilled now. Exclamation mark. And this is Prabhupada, he's very confident.
Yeah.
That's one of the items that you have to have if you want to be successful. Utsaha Nishchaya. Nishchaya means very confident. And then it says, Srimat Bhaktivedanta Swami, a resident of Vrindavan. It's interesting, he's back in Calcutta, it's where he was born and brought up. But now he's advertising himself as a resident of Vrindavan. Has translated the Srimad Bhagavatam into English in 60 volumes with the word-for-word meaning and purports. Before this great work could be appreciated by his countrymen, people from far-off America have expressed their admiration of this supernormal achievement, and they've invited him so that they may meet him in person and acquaint themselves with his work. Hence he is departing from Calcutta for New York this 12th day of August. Of course, Prabhupada left the next day. That date is a little bit inaccurate, but that says a lot about Srila Prabhupada there. That prophecy is going to be fulfilled now. It's interesting to note, of course, that Prabhupada was not the only one that was given the instruction to preach in the West. That was a general ambition, if you like, of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that the preaching should go to many countries around the world. So it's not like it was an exclusive, instruction that Prabhupada got, but it was a particular instruction for him. There's a little story that Prabhupada told me when we were in Hyderabad in December of 1976. We were just gone out to the new farm there, and there was a bit of a delay in building this house that they were doing for Prabhupada. So we were staying in this row of like brick cottages with tin, like a corrugated iron roof. And Prabhupada was staying in one little room there. He had a darshan one night. Somebody gave him a small photograph of deities in a frame. So Prabhupada gave it to me. He told me now he put it on top of the almirah. So you know what an almirah is, a steel cabinet. So the roof of the building was quite low, and it started high at the front and sloped down to the back. And the almirah was on the back wall, and there was just a little gap. By the time the roof came down, there was a little gap there. So Prabhupada said, put the picture on the top of the almirah. So I took it, and I was trying and stick it in this way and stick it in that way. And, everybody's looking, and Prabhupada's waiting, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure out how to get it in there. So Prabhupada got up, he came over, he took photo off me, and he just went, "Boom," and it was in. I don't know how he did it. He just flicked it in, and that was it, 2 seconds. So everybody laughed, and then Prabhupada sat down, he was laughing. He said, "Everything requires a little intelligence." And then he said, "You know the story of Columbus and friends?" So I didn't know it, and so I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, meaning tell us." So Prabhupada obliged. So he said, well, Columbus and friends, they were sitting, this was after he discovered America and come back, and his friends were saying, well, actually anybody could have done it, because America was there, the ships were there, you just got on the ship and just sailed, and you bumped into it. And he was saying, no, it actually took some intelligence. So they're having this debate, and they wouldn't concede that he'd done something special. So he said, all right, he said, I'll show you, I'll prove it to you. So he took a chicken's egg, and he told them, now you make this egg stand up on its end on the table. So each one of them tried, and of course nobody could do it, the egg kept rolling this way and that way. So then he took it, he said, all right, now I'll show you how to do it. Boom. Breaks the shell and stands it up. So then they all said, oh, anybody could have done that. And he said, no, he said, you tried and couldn't do it, but I tried and I did it. So therefore it takes a little intelligence and you have to give me some credit. So in the same way, you know, there was this party that went in 1933, Bon Maharaj and Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha and Sambhidananda, and they sat for several years in London. They were receiving about 700 rupees a month from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. That was a huge amount of money in those days, 1930s. And although they were being funded, they couldn't do anything. And after a couple of years, they were called back. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati let it be known that he was unhappy with their efforts. And actually, he had been planning, I think it was even stated in one of the harmonists, that if they did establish something in London, he was personally going to go there and stay there, and then from there he would use that as a launching point to go to America. So he had a plan, and if these men had been successful, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati may have been the first acharya to go out. But as it turned out, it didn't happen. He called them back. He wouldn't even see Bon Maharaj when he came. He let it be known he was very unhappy with what he'd done there. So there was some effort, and everybody knew about this desire of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but Prabhupada was the one that did it. And I've heard sometimes it's said that, well, it was predicted, so somebody would have done it. If it wasn't Prabhupada, it would have been somebody else. It minimizes the value of what he did and the individual effort that he made to make it successful. But actually it was Prabhupada that did it. He took it very seriously, more than any other god brother. And because of that, he was successful. So we have to give him full credit. So anyway, there's just this little entry in his diary. If you remember in the first Leelamrita, first volume, A Lifetime of Preparation, the last 2 paragraphs give this very romantic and dramatic description of Prabhupada, going to the docks, boarding all alone, nobody there to see him off. This man is quoted Shishu Bhattacharya, that he was with Prabhupada, he went together with him in the taxi, nobody was there to see him off. He was a lone warrior going off with no support, no friends. Even if you counted me, I was not a disciple of his, but due to shared love, I was his friend. But I was the only one on the docks to see him, to say him goodbye, and he sailed away by himself. Totally bogus. It's not what happened at all. This is the danger of interviewing people about a famous person that they have a slight peripheral contact with. Somehow or another it becomes a magical moment. But actually what happened is recorded in Prabhupada's diary, and this diary came out in about 1989 or 90. The archives published it. Somehow or another, it had been hidden away, and not purposefully, but Prabhupada had at one point given this diary to Balimadan Prabhu, I think maybe in the late 60s, and asked him to look after it. So he had locked it away in the safe. Later on, of course, he had his own problems. He drifted away from active service, and it wasn't till the late 80s when he found that diary again and surrendered it to the archives. So there was, you know, like a gap there from Prabhupada's disappearance to when this diary was discovered. And because the Leela and Rita had to be written, of course, Satsvarup had to rely on, you know, the interviews that they did, especially for the pre-ISKCON days. So in that way then, you know, they got this interview with this guy and it completely, you know, gave them a false impression. But what really happened, it said here, Friday the 13th, and don't let anybody tell you that that's an inauspicious day. It's the most auspicious day. Prabhupada, it says, at 9 AM, embarked on the MV Jaladuta. Came with me Bhagwati, the Darwan of Sindhya Sansia, Mr. Sen Gupta, Mr. Ali, and Vrindavan. So that Vrindavan is Vrindavan Chandra Day, Prabhupada's youngest son, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The cabinet is quite comfortable. It is the owner's residence, and therefore the sitting room, the bedroom, and the bath and privy are all equipped with first-class materials. Everything is nice in the first-class compartment, and thanks to Lord Sri Krishna for his enlightening Srimati Sumati Maharaji for all of these arrangements. I am quite comfortable. The ship started at 1:30 PM, very slowly from the dock, and reached near the botanical garden and stopped in midstream of the Ganges until 11 PM, and then turned towards the front and started. It is quite steady. I cannot understand in my cabin if it is at all moving. I'm so comfortable. The voyage was again stopped at 3:30 AM at Kalpi near Diamond Harbour, and then Ganakali, and then detained for about 8 hours. The delta of the Ganges is quite wide with shallow water. So that's Prabhupada's description of his leaving then. As I mentioned, myself and Yogeshwara Prabhu, who's working on a new biography of Prabhupada since the last 2 years. We met with Vrindavan Chandra Day a couple of months ago in April, and we were going over some of the details of this, and he told me that, yes, he said, in the morning my father came by taxi. He'd been staying at some dharamshala near Newton Bazaar, Newmarket, and he said we went together in the taxi, and then when we got to the ship, he said I went on board. I sat in the cabin with him for some time. He said he was reading the newspaper, so quite possibly he was looking to see if his article had been carried. And then after half an hour, then it was time to leave, and he got down, and that was it. And Vrindavan Chandra had a kind of distant relationship with his father in some respects. He was born in 1939, and the way that he described seeing his father was that it was like an occasional event. As Prabhupada was always out traveling doing his business, and he was always active trying to do his preaching work, he was practically never at home. So Vrindavan Chandra didn't really know him that well. And of course when Prabhupada left for the USA, Vrindavan Chandra would have been, what, 65, 39, so about 20, in his early 20s anyway. But he always had deep respect, of course, and he was kind of always in a bit of awe and reverence as well with him. But he was, I guess in one sense, like the pet son. And so Prabhupada had picked him up and taken him with him to the ship. Whereas the other son, M.M. Day, was a little bit different nature, which we won't go into right now. Anyway, so this is the beginning of Prabhupada's mission abroad. Of course, the beginning in the sense that it's the physical start, if you like, when Prabhupada left the Jnana-Dutta. But he always had the idea or the ambition to preach in the West, and there's evidence of that in various places. There's one story that was told to me by one of his godbrothers, Abhiyal Kapoor. This was from the 1930s. Prabhupada, of course, was living in Allahabad. And Abhiyal Kapoor was a young student at that time. He was about 6 years younger than Prabhupada, but they became good friends. And they would meet together in the Allahabad Gaudiya Mat in the evenings. Prabhupada was an expert drummer and kirtan leader. And of course in the daytime he was running his pharmacy. So one day Prabhupada came to the mat. Abhiyal Kapoor was there. He was a bit run down, some kind of a flu or virus or something. So Prabhupada told him that, you know, I'll give you some tonic and that will cure that problem. So he said, very nice, I'll accept your tonic, but I want the tonic that you're taking. And then Prabhupada laughed. He said, well, what tonic is that? So he said, the tonic that gives you love of Godhead. So then Prabhupada laughed. He said, well, I don't have that tonic, but I have the formula. And I'm going to preach it all around the world. And this is very, so he said, now looking back, he said, at the time when he made that remark, I didn't think anything of it all around the world. But he said, I can understand that even then, this is in the 1930s, that he was thinking on this big scale. So there's an interesting little anecdote. And of course, Prabhupada had been singled out also by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Not in definite terms, but enough to show that he knew what was to come. In 1935, Prabhupada had been living in Bombay and doing his business, and then the Gaudiya Mat members came there and they wanted to open up a new centre. So he helped them tremendously. He found people to give money, he found some land, and Prabhupada was an expert manager. So they appreciated it so much that later on, in 1935, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and a lot of the leaders came there to Bombay. And so they made a suggestion to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that Abhay Babu is very expert. Whatever he does, he's very enthusiastic to preach. So we think that he should be the temple president for the Bombay Mat. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said no. He said he's better off outside of your company. He said later on, he said he himself will do everything. He does not require your help. So that was reported back to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada told me that when I heard that I will do everything, he said, I couldn't understand what that meant. What does it mean? I will do everything alone? So Prabhupada was, you know, himself, you know, kind of innocent of what was to come. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati obviously foresaw something. And in 1977 in Calcutta, I was with Abhiram. We were talking with Prabhupada, and he was telling us about when he was in Radhakund in 1935. He stayed there for about 10 or 12 days. So he had a very interesting and friendly relationship with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Mostly, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was very stern, and many of even his leading disciples were a little afraid of him. You know, it's very formal, awe and reverence. But when Prabhupada got with him, they had free exchange of conversation, and sometimes Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would share some confidential information, or he would tell him about some things that he was thinking about, you know, personally, his observations. That's where all this, you know, famous line, Agun Jvalbe, there will be a fire, this Gaudiya Mat will burn. That was, you know, so that was the level of their exchange. And it was so intimate that at one point, one of the leaders whispered in Prabhupada's ear that angels fear, fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Yes.
Yeah, meaning we're the angels, we're the sannyasis, you're a catcher grihasta, a rotten grihasta. How are you getting such a close, you're getting too close. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So Prabhupada said, well, when he told me that, I thought, well, fool I may be, but that's my relationship. So he had that kind of intimate relationship with his spiritual master. So Abhiram asked Prabhupada, did your spiritual master know that you would go on to do what you would have done? This is in 77, of course, when we asked this question. And Prabhupada said yes. So, there's some transcendental exchanges going on there. But apparently, it was revealed to Prabhupada step by step. At the beginning, he had no idea. Well, I will do everything. What does that even mean? Anyway, so Prabhupada, of course, as they say, it's all history, what Prabhupada attained after going to America. But I want to just focus in a little bit on, first of all, a couple of appreciations of Prabhupada, and then we'll look at what happened when he actually, well, not what happened, but we'll look at the material that he took with him when he set sail. So after Prabhupada's disappearance, I was told about this conversation. I wasn't personally there. I've heard slight variations on it, but the essence is the same. That there was some discussion between two godbrothers. One of them was a Kinshana Krishna Das Babaji, who was very close with Prabhupada. He was always, whenever Prabhupada came to Vrindavan, if he was in the district, he would come and see him. Everybody that knew a Kinshana Krishna Das, had the highest respect for him. He was a real chanter of the holy names. I think he was one of the few disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that was given Babaji initiation by him. I heard a little story. I don't know how accurate this is, but again, it's illustrative, that when he first joined the Gaudiya Math, the Baghdazar temple in Calcutta, he just walked in and he sat down with the devotees, he started chanting. And they're chanting and he's chanting, and then when they stopped, he wanted to keep on going. They asked him to do some service. This was something that they did in the mats to make sure that anybody that showed some interest in joining, all right, engage them in service and see how sincere they are. So he didn't want to do any service, he wanted to just chant. So they weren't sure what to do with him, so they went to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because he had his headquarters for preaching there. And they told him, there's this man here, and all he wants to do is chant. But what to do? So then he apparently told them, well, you sit down and you chant with him and just stay there and keep on chanting. See what happens. And so they did that. So they were chanting and he was chanting, and they were chanting and he was chanting, and they were chanting and he was chanting, and then they stopped and he just kept on chanting. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, yes, so let him chant. So he was well known in the Gaudiya Math. He was,